So we finally know who's going to be driving the fifth Andretti Autosport entry at this year's Indianapolis 500. And before I get to the announcement, I would just like to lament the fact that once again we have a driver announcement and Conor Daly is not driving the car. What's it gotta take to get Conor Daly a ride in IndyCar? I mean, it's so unacceptable. He's done so much with so little and hang on. What? That's right, Gomers rejoice. Conor Daly will have a ride in the Indianapolis 500, and no less of a team than Andretti Autosport. The car will be numbered 25, and the sponsorship will be very familiar as well, as the Air Force returns to sponsor Conor Daly once again at this year's Indianapolis 500 like they did last year with the Dale Coyne, Tom Burns racing effort. And also, Air Force will sponsor the entire Andretti Autosport team throughout the season as a associate sponsorship, or an associate sponsor if you are grammatically correct. And obviously, this is going to be big news for the IndyCar faithful. At one point, Conor Daly was actually voted the most popular driver in the series. So there's a lot of people out there who are very excited and have been looking forward to an announcement such as this regarding Conor Daly for quite a long time. That's why I kind of started out with the Conor Daly needs a ride meme, because it really has turned into a meme. It seems like every single time an announcement is made or a ride becomes available, somebody in some comment section, particularly these ones in Racer and Facebook and all the IndyCar hotbeds, immediately the first guy that comes up is Conor Daly. And obviously, this is the biggest opportunity of his career, racing for Andretti Autosport. And of course, we also know how strong Andretti Autosport has been at the Indy 500. I mean, just look behind me. 3 of the 6 cars sitting on that shelf behind me are from the Andretti Autosport stable. So they definitely know how to win the Indianapolis 500 in the modern era. Now, they weren't that great this year in particular. Certainly, I think the new aero kit took them a little bit of getting used to, but IndyCar is increasing downforce for this year pretty significantly, so I would expect a similar race to 2017, or at least somewhat more similar to 2017 than what we saw in 2018, and certainly with the amount of cars that Andretti Autosport will be entering, and believe me, we're going to get there, that this is going to only benefit Mr. Conor Daly to get to run in traffic, get to have a car that's capable of running up front, and certainly that's a major change of pace from where he was last year. In fact, I think one of the best drives of last year's Indianapolis 500 came from Conor Daly, driving not only that Dale Coyne car in the race and actually keeping it off the walls, and you saw what happened when a driver was in a car that was not capable of really keeping up with the pack, with James Davison creating the accident with Takuma Sato. Daly never found himself in that position despite having a car that I would describe as equal or lesser than the one that James Davison was in. And he kept it off the walls, he kept it out of the way, finished a couple of laps down, but it was a very admirable performance from him. So he's going to go from one of the worst cars in the field to one of the best cars in the field, and that is going to be a significant step up. Of course, Conor Daly is no stranger to kind of bouncing around teams. Obviously, I'm wearing some of the gear right now from one of the particular teams, one of the better teams, in fact, he's been with. In fact, his entire history, I think, went Foyt, then he went to Coyne, then he went to Schmidt, then he went back to Coyne, then he went back to Foyt, then he went back to Coyne, and now he's with Andretti Autosport. Now, Andretti Autosport themselves actually have wanted to work with Conor Daly in the past. In fact, he was their first choice to replace Justin Wilson when Wilson was unfortunately killed at Pocono. Not unfortunately, but circumstances were so that Justin Wilson's family wanted Oriol Servia to take over that seat, and so the team honored the wishes of Justin Wilson's family and went with Oriol Servia in the car. So Michael Andretti has been high on Conor Daly for a while now, and I guess it was only a matter of time till they could get a deal like this together. And it seems like they're so high on Conor Daly that he is going to be their only official extra entry for this year's Indianapolis 500, and that has been a talking point as well. Only five cars from the Andretti Autosport stable going into this year's Indianapolis 500. Of course, the 4 regular season drivers, so to speak, Zach Veach, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Marco Andretti, and of course Alexander Rossi will be filling out the rest of the stable, I guess you could say, along with Conor Daly. And that definitely raises an interesting point, because at one point, a lot of us, myself included, were convinced that Andretti Autosport would enter 6 cars, as they usually do. Of course, last year they entered 2 wild card entries for not Justin Wilson, but Stefan Wilson, as well as Carlos Munoz. Both of those drivers, I suppose, are now on the free agent market. So exactly where could they go? There's some speculation that Munoz could end up at Schmidt. Stefan Wilson, who knows where he could end up. Certainly there's going to be a couple of open theoretical seats at Coyne, but I think the drivers with the most coin are going to be the ones first in line for those particular rides. And I'm not necessarily sure that a guy like Stefan Wilson has enough money to buy out, say, a James Davison or a Pippa Mann. You go over to looking at what this team, Andretti Autosport, will look like this year versus years past. And you look at the amount of entries, obviously it shrunk a bit this year, but also consider that the Harding-Steinbrenner team is going to be very, very closely linked with Andretti Autosport. So in a lot of ways, it's almost like this is a 7-car operation rather than a 6-car operation that it was last year. I mean, if you don't believe that Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta aren't going to go out there when Andretti runs their happy hour pack racing sessions, I think you've got another thing coming. And certainly it helps with the technical support that's coming into that team from Andretti Autosport, that you're going to see a pretty straight-laced effort between all of those teams, all of those drivers, to try to get an Indianapolis 500 win from at least one Andretti-supported car. Conor Daly, I guess we'll finally talk about the man, the myth, the legend himself. Like I said earlier, this is a huge opportunity. I think, and again, I probably titled the video this, the guy has a legitimate shot of winning the Indy 500, which I think is more than you can say about any previous entry he has had into this particular race. You look at the Schmidt car he had in 15, that car blew up before he even got to run it. And that was probably, if I'm thinking about it, that may have been his best car he's been in an Indianapolis 500. In terms of a competitive car that really can get the job done. Maybe some people will say Foyt in 17, but the Chevrolet Aero Kit wasn't particularly the best one at that particular point. And of course, Foyt was just starting out with that particular aero package versus everybody else who had a couple years of development at that point. So they were definitely working off of the back foot. Then I guess you could say maybe Coyne in 16 was a pretty good opportunity. But if you look at where Coyne was in 16 versus where Andretti Autosport was in 16, that is pretty clear where the discrepancy lied in performance. It's also interesting to see the Air Force back. I guess it's great to see the Air Force back as well, supporting Conor Daly. I guess they felt like they got a lot of value out of Conor last year, and it definitely goes to show you how important it is when you're a one-off team with a fairly major sponsor like the Air Force to be able to get into the race, to prove that you can qualify, because the sponsor will obviously look at that and be able to say, okay, what happens if we, get this guy out of the 33rd fastest car and put him maybe in the 7th fastest car? Hey, maybe we can actually, get someplace. And I think that's the logic with everybody involved with this, is going to be kind of to see, does Conor Daly have all these chops that everybody always talks about? And by the way, I think he does. I think he's going to impress a lot of people. It's going to be, and now that being said, is he going to go out there immediately and beat Alexander Rossi in a straight up head-to-head contest? Probably not. I do think there have to be some realistic expectations. I think, despite him being in a car and a team and the situation that can win the Indianapolis 500, I think realistically you're looking at a top 10. If you're really in good shape, I think you're looking at a top 5. I think that is a realistic expectation. I know probably Conor himself is thinking, just go out there and win, and more power to him, by the way, for thinking that, because again, this is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come around a whole lot. Now, at the same time, Michael Andretti has talked about the potential of doing more races further on down the season with Conor Daly, some sort of a partial season thing, if Daly performs exceptionally well at Indianapolis. To me, that's a team owner saying, as long as Conor Daly doesn't shove it in the wall or, just not perform up to what that car is or what its performance threshold is, he's definitely got some more opportunities potentially heading down the line with the team. This should be very exciting in a lot of ways because not only do we have a young American driver that a lot of people are high on getting into the show or getting into the or getting onto the entry list. Let's put it that way. But this is the 30th confirmed entry into this year's Indianapolis 500, and keep in mind we're not even at January 31st yet. Are you still doubting me, Reddit, that there's going to be 40 cars? Because I think we're getting to the point where, there are a lot of seats still to be announced, but there aren't a whole lot of seats out there that are left, so to speak. I think you've got the second McLaren seat. I think you've got a couple seats at Coyne. You've got a potential seat at Carlin Racing. You've got the McLaren one, obviously. You just don't know. Dreyer and Reinbold doesn't have their drivers confirmed. There's still a few seats open out there, but they're starting to become fewer and further between. So the Indy 500 is going to be, like I keep saying, it's going to be a fantastic race just the whole month. It's not even just going to be the 500 miles itself. It's going to be the practice. It's going to be the qualifying. It's going to be figuring out who the fastest 33 are, and then those fastest 33 are going to figure out who the fastest among all of them are going to be. And that's going to be what we all want. That's what we all, what makes the Indianapolis 500 such a special event. So, Conor Daly finally gets a ride. You guys can stop asking. Well, I guess now people are going to be asking for him to get a full season ride. But take what you can get. Conor Daly is in one of the better cars in this year's Indianapolis 500. Do you think he can win? What do you think his expectations are? What do you think they should be? What do you think actually will happen with Conor Daly in this ride at the 103rd Indianapolis 500? So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport and IndyCar content, and I'll see you in the next video.